Chris from needlepointers.com, and today I'd like to share with you this green vertical stripe quilt that I made recently. If you'd like to make a quilt similar to this one, please click the link in the description below and it will take you to our website, needlepointers.com, where you will find a tutorial on this quilt and a PDF downloadable which includes the cutting instructions and the layout of this quilt. I will also have links to the fabric used in this quilt so that you can make one similar to this. This quilt was inspired from a quilt that I purchased many years ago. My son took to liking the quilt and he loved this quilt to death. It was had these big tears all the way from top to bottom in it, and like whole sections of the fabric was missing and stuff, so it was unrepairable, unfortunately. But since it was a purchase quilt, it wasn't like a family heirloom or something. So what I did was took that quilt and as inspiration and created this one, and hopefully he will love this one as much as he loved the one that was purchased from the store. The unique feature of the original quilt was that it was made using this swaddle fabric, which is a very thin, gauzy fabric, and it's combined also with stripes that are made from a quilter's cotton. But recently I was at Joann Fabrics and I noticed in the nursery section that they had this gauzy fabric that looked a lot like the fabric in the quilt. It's called a nursery swaddle fabric and it's soft and very gauzy. I decided that I would use that nursery swaddle fabric to make this quilt for my son to take with him to college. As you can see, this quilt is made up of vertical stripes with white, green, and tan fabrics. The swaddle fabric is mixed in with the tan fabrics made from quilter's cotton. The finished quilt is a full or queen size quilt and it's 90 inches wide by approximately 87 inches tall. I was originally planning for the quilt to be 92 inches long, but after I sewed together all of the strips in the center, I ended up trimming off the top and the bottom to even it off, and I ended up losing about 5 inches of the length of the quilt. So if you make this quilt, make sure you take into account that you might have to trim off some of the top and the bottom to even it off after it's been sewn together, or you have to be a lot more careful than I was on sewing your strips together so that you don't have to trim as much off the top and the bottom. The quilt also has a 3-inch border all the way around, which is added after you put together all the stripes. For the backing of the quilt, I used a Lush fleece fabric, and it's similar to a minky in softness and texture, except it doesn't have the little bumps that minky has. And this makes the quilt very heavy, and it will be really warm for my son when he goes to college up north. Because I used the Lush fleece fabric for the backing of this quilt, I decided to use a flannel for the batting instead of traditional cotton batting. I needed something to put between the two layers because the fleece is a dark green and this is such light fabric that without something in between, the green would show through. So I added a neutral colored flannel fabric that I purchased, which was 108 inches wide, and it is in between as the batting layer. To make this quilt, I made the tan strip sets first, and I numbered them so that I knew which ones went in each section. When sewing the strip sets together, I sewed them from top to bottom, and then the next one bottom to top, alternating back and forth, and this helps it from getting a wave in the quilt when you're sewing long strips together. After having the strip sets sewn together, I then added the swaddle fabric. You need to be careful when sewing with the swaddle fabric, as the swaddle fabric is really stretchy. So it will end up distorting and stretching all over the place. So pinning it is probably a good idea. And then you can make sure that you're matching up the top and the bottom pretty well. For the quilting, I just did some straight lines up and down the quilt along the edges of some of the strips. Not every one of the strips, but I did every couple strips. I also used a green thread for quilting the top, and if I was going to make this quilt again, I would probably do it with a tan thread instead for the quilting. For the binding, I use my favorite flange binding method. I like this binding because no hand sewing is required, and the flange adds some extra interest to the quilt. See the link in the description to find a tutorial on this flange binding method. On the back, the quilt label features a piece of the original quilt. I hope you enjoyed learning about this quilt, and go to our website to get the free pattern download. Let us know in the comments what you think about this quilt and how you would make it. Like and share our videos, and if you're not a subscriber, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss future videos. Help us spread our videos by sharing them with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram. Visit our website needlepointers.com for lots of other quilting tutorials and free projects. While you're there, sign up for a free weekly newsletter so you won't miss new tutorials. Happy quilting!